living in between the here and now and heaven's point of view. I'm living in a desert spell. I'm looking to be overwhelmed, renew the joy that stirred my soul.
Greetings here, YouTube world. Mike Hauser here with another video blog. It's Christmas time, as you can see, in the Hauser house here, and I want to share something that was a big gift to me, and I'm hoping it'll be a gift to you. It's a podcast by Andy Stanley called Gaining and Sustaining Momentum. I have it here on my beautiful iPhone 4S, which is the current version at the moment, and as a youth pastor, we all have to have the latest Apple devices. But anyways, they don't have this on the iTunes store anymore. It's a free MP3 that you can get. So I didn't pay for this. It's free, but it's not on there anymore. And I want to share this with a bunch of my ministry friends, and I can't. I guess I could email it to them directly, but that would just clog up their email, and that bothers people. So anyways, I thought I'd throw it on my YouTube channel here, and there's a possibility Andy Stanley's people might find this and shut it down and say I'm not allowed to have this on. And I thought, hey, it's worth the risk. I could add that to my resume, Andy Stanley shut me down for something, and that'd be fun. But anyways, I hope you enjoy this. There's 2 parts, 1 and 2, and this is the generic intro for both of them, so I hope you enjoy it. If you end up watching the second one, just fast forward all this bald guy stuff and get right to the good stuff. So hope you enjoy it. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Birthday, Happy Anniversary, whatever holiday you'd like to watch us on, be my guest. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Andy Stanley Leadership Podcast, a conversation designed to help leaders go further faster. Today, we're talking about creating and sustaining momentum. Andy, for a lot of leaders, it's kind of like talking about the wind. I mean, we feel it, but we don't know where it comes from, and we certainly don't know how to create it.
Yeah, there's nothing more fun than being a leader in an organization or a department, division, or even an industry where the wind is at your back and the problems are all good problems. In church world, we can't find enough parking spots, we can't build enough space, we're out of room, or whatever the industry is. Everybody knows or can at least imagine what it would feel like to come to work every day where things were just moving forward. But the problem is, because momentum is such a mysterious thing, and as you said, it's like the wind, I feel like we're always one dumb decision away from killing whatever momentum we have because we don't understand what's created it. And if you don't understand where momentum comes from, again, every single day is an opportunity to mess the whole thing up.
Yeah, and in church world especially, we often sort of assign a whole different category to it.
Yeah, in church world, when a church has momentum, of course, because we want to be very careful to give credit to God, we say things like, well, God's just blessing. And I got to tell you, when I hear church leaders who are in a church, where things are just going great, say, well, God's just blessing, that always strikes me as a bit arrogant. And it's not because I'm not quick to give credit to God for good things. It's because I think, wait a minute, so God just decided to bless your church, but not the church 1 block down the road or, a mile away, or a church that's been in your community where they're working just as hard as you are. What do you mean God somehow just spun the wheel or, threw a dart at the map and it just happened to land on your church? The question isn't, is God blessing? I think the better question to ask is, what is God blessing? Because I think there are transferable principles when it comes to momentum. And so understanding what those are and implementing those serves a church, serves an organization, department, division. I just think there are principles of momentum. And as a Christian, I think God created all principles. So I don't think it's a bad thing to give God credit. I think it's a safer thing to say, what is it that we're doing that God is blessing that we should continue doing so that we can continue to experience momentum.
Right. Well, we're going to listen to a clip from a talk you did recently on this whole idea of creating momentum, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
3 components of sustained momentum. If you have to leave early, here's the whole day in a sentence. Ready? 3 components of sustained momentum. New, improved, and improving. New, improved, and improving. Just say them with me. New, improved, and improving. That is the magic. That is the mystery. That is the transferable idea behind all momentum. Letter A, new. Number 1, new triggers momentum. New triggers momentum. Number 2, anything new by definition generates some kind of momentum. This is just a universal principle. Anything new by definition automatically generates some kind of momentum. Number 3, the momentum can be positive or negative. And let me give you 2 or 3 examples real quick as we get into this. Negative event can result in negative momentum. An example of that is 9/11, right? A negative event created negative momentum. The economy fell apart, stock market fell apart, unemployment went up, the self-esteem of our nation fell apart for a while. Negative event, negative momentum. But the event was something new. Second illustration. Negative event can create positive momentum. A negative event, because an event is something new, a negative event can create positive momentum. A rescue. This thing that we just saw happen in Chile where they, rescued the 33 miners after 69 days. It was a horrible event, right? When the mine caved in, but there was all kinds of positive momentum as a result of that. Anytime there's a rescue, new things are learned, people come together, communities come together. In your note, it says this. This is a little tip for you. Negative circumstances, which may be what you're in right now. Negative circumstances are the fertile soil for a burst of positive momentum. Negative circumstances or difficult circumstances are always fertile soil for a positive burst of momentum, because when you bring something new to something that's not working, you are automatically going to have some momentum, because new always triggers momentum. My first 3 ministry opportunities or experiences were this exactly. I walked in my first 3 deals in high school when I worked with high school students, and I worked with college students, and I went back and worked with high school students for 10 years. All 3 of those, I walked into situations that were broken. I didn't have to be that good to create momentum because things were so broken. Just walking in with fresh ideas and doing new things created momentum. Negative circumstances are fertile soil for a burst of positive momentum. Then the third illustration is sometimes a positive event can create positive momentum. If you are in a city that ever got a new sports franchise, new event, positive momentum, because positive events can create positive momentum as well. Now, number 4, organizational momentum is often triggered by one of 3 things. Now, remember, new triggers momentum. Here are 3 things that almost always trigger momentum on the practical side. Organizational momentum is often triggered by one of 3 things. Letter A, new leadership. New leadership. You're going to hear Craig and I talk a lot about multi-campus and multi-site, and we're still trying to figure that out, and we've both learned so much from each other. I'm sure I've learned more from him on this than he's learned from me. But one thing that we've learned is that a multi-site, or a church plant in our case, that is in an okay location, that has the same programming that all the other churches that we've planted have, that don't have a great leader, don't do very well. But when we bring a new leader into the same location with the same people with the same programming, oftentimes bringing in a new leader creates a burst of momentum. Why? Because new always triggers momentum. We have a campus that we actually inherited from a church that planted the church, and they abandoned the church plant. The church plant came to us and said, help. And we said, we'll take you over, but we got to shut you down. We did a relaunch, rename, rebrand, launched them, and they did pretty good. Then the leader left. We got another leader. They did pretty good. It was just okay, Then we brought in our 3rd leader. Same group of people, same facility, same programming. Boom, doubled in about 6 or 7 months, and they're doing incredible. What was the difference? We just brought in a new leader, and sometimes new leadership is all you need for a burst of momentum. But the transferable principle is not, well, we need that guy. The transferable principle is new triggers momentum. Letter B, new direction. A new direction, sometimes just new direction, new vision triggers momentum. You've seen that before. It's so fun to talk to churches who lose their pastor. Not because they lost their pastor, but churches that lose their pastor. Sometimes it is good. They lose their pastor, and the church comes together and they decide, you know what? We don't need to wait till we get a new senior pastor to do something effective in this community. You ever been in a church like that or heard about that? And they don't really have a strong communicator point person, but a team comes together and a leader emerges. And they just decide, let's take the church in a different direction while we look for a senior leader. And all of a sudden there's momentum, and there's not even a senior pastor. There's not even a point stage speaker person. Why? Because they went in a new direction, and new triggers momentum every single time. And letter C, a new product. Or in our world, we would say a new program, new product, new program. We in Atlanta, especially in our city church, our sort of downtown church, tons and tons of singles. About 70% of our attenders there are single. And trying to figure out how to do singles ministry, we've tried every iteration of everything, and we've learned some things the hard way. But what we've learned is this: to create momentum among our singles, we have a shorter window. We'll talk about this at the end of this session in just a few minutes. We have a shorter cycle. With high school students, you have 4 years. With kids in school, you have a school cycle. With singles, it's shorter. What we learned is if we will continually change up the programming and introduce new programming, we automatically create new momentum that builds on old momentum. So instead of just trying to get singles to come back to something, why don't you come back and why don't you attend? We've learned we need a short ministry cycle, restart. At every restart, there's new momentum that builds on old momentum. Sometimes all you need is a new product, new program. Implication number 5. When evaluating an organization or program that lacks momentum, and when I say organization, it can be a department in your church, division in your church, ask these questions. Do we need a new leader? Do we need a new direction? Or do we need a new product? Or do we need some combination of the three? Now, let me tell you why this is so important. Because in business and in church world, the default is to say we need a new leader. We just default there because we love to blame somebody. Now, some of you heard me talk about systems before. I don't have time to go into that whole thing today. But there's 3 levels of blame. We blame the person. We need a new pastor. We need a new youth director. We need a new education director. We need a new person. We go there quick. But remember, that's just one of 3. You may need a new leader, but you may need a new direction, and you may need a new product. If you've had 3 education directors in a row, and none of them have been able to make adult Sunday school really shine and really grow, the problem probably isn't the education director. It may be adult Sunday school. Okay? What's the common denominator? It's not those 3 guys. It's adults. I'm just picking on adult Sunday school. It could be the way you do student ministry. It could be the way that you do worship. But if you are continually interchanging players going, we just need the right person, we just need the right person, we just need the right person to spark momentum, remember, there's people, and there's direction, and there's programming, and any one of those 3 could be the culprit. And changing any one of those 3, if you change the right one of those 3, may be the key to sparking or creating momentum, because the bottom line, if you don't remember anything else, is this: new triggers momentum. Number 6, momentum is never, and if you are in an established church, you need to circle this one. Momentum is never triggered by tweaking something old. It is triggered by introducing something new. Churches, we are so guilty of trying to tweak something old. What if we change the color of the choir robes? That will probably light things up around here. We need new carpet. Okay, you may need new carpet. New carpet is a tweak. Changing the choir robes, that's a tweak. Going from 6 to 12, on people in your ensemble, that's a tweak. Going from electronic drums to acoustic drums, that's a tweak. Okay, these are tweaks. And just remember, you can't tweak your department, division, or church into momentum. Tweaks don't do it. It has to be something completely brand startling. You got to be kidding. I can't believe they're doing that. We've never seen that before. New triggers momentum. But new is expensive. New is risky. And so we default to tweak. And then we wonder why there's no momentum. I wrote this in my notes. Minor improvements to something that lacks momentum will not trigger momentum. Minor improvements to something that doesn't have momentum never creates momentum. It just makes something that's mediocre a little bit better. And you have never been to a staff meeting where the agenda was, hey, let's take something that's mediocre, let's try to make it a little bit better, okay? But when you tweak something that's mediocre, you just get a little bit more mediocre. The other thing I wrote in my notes is this, that this is the challenge with established churches, because established organizations will always be tempted to tweak the old rather than launch the new. Warning. New does not guarantee sustained momentum. Some of you have already been thinking that. New does not guarantee sustained momentum, but new is an essential trigger for momentum. So, lesson number 1 in momentum. New things always create momentum. They don't create sustained momentum, but new things always create some kind of momentum. It can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, but new things always trigger momentum. New, improved, improving.
Andy, in the clip, you said new leadership, new direction, or new product, or things to consider when we lack momentum. But then you also mentioned our tendency is just to default to new leader. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I think one reason we default to thinking a new leader will give us momentum is because oftentimes that is the case. I think of the 3, generally, new leadership is the easiest, quickest way to trigger momentum. But the reason I listed those is because since that's our default, well, we just need a new department head. We just need a new vice president. We just need a new manager. We just need a new person. The problem is if we have a bad product to begin with, if we have embraced the wrong vision or the wrong direction to begin with, then a new leader will not solve the problem. Now, here's why that's important. Before an organization opts to embrace or to hire a new leader or put somebody else in a position, they first need to ask the question, what are we not willing to quit doing? What are we not willing to quit doing? Because if we, and we see this in church world all the time. You know, church is floundering. They get rid of their pastor. They bring in a new pastor. Right. And they never say to the new pastor, now, we want you to lead us, but you can't change this, you can't change this, you can't change this, and don't even think about changing this. Right. Well, they're excited about the new leader, and potentially this new leader could bring momentum to the church. But if they've never looked at the product or the direction, then even a great leader is going to be limited in terms of creating momentum. So organizations that lack momentum need to look at all three. Is our problem the leader? The answer may be yes. Is our problem the product? The answer may be yes. And by changing the product, you may not need to change the leader. But if you think you need to change the product, then you need to make sure you've made that decision before you put a new leader in place. The other place where we see this as an issue is in family businesses. Family business, you got an entrepreneurial entrepreneurial leader who, you know, his generation or her generation started this business, and then they decide to transition out, hand it off to the kids. And it's a business that lacks momentum, but we're handing it off to the kids. It's a new group of leaders, but it's a new group of leaders that embrace their parents or their previous generation approach to that business. Well, it may be by that time it's a wrong direction, or it may be a bad product. But because it's a family business, the tendency is to do it the way we've always done it. And they wonder why, hey, we put in a new leader, but we didn't gain any momentum. So I think whenever there's a lack of momentum, every organization, no matter how confident they are, we need new leadership. They need to remember it's new leadership, it's a new program or product, and it may mean we need a new direction. And if you think it's a new direction, then go ahead and make the decision. We're open to a new direction before we bring in a new leader, because any one of those things can trigger momentum. And so the default to a new leader is understandable, but I think there's some homework organizations need to do before they just assume, well, once we get that new guy in here, once we get the new lady in here, then things are just going to take off. They may or they may not. Right.
You went on to say momentum is never triggered by tweaking something old. It's triggered by introducing something new. And I mean, that's obvious when you hear it, but I think we're all sort of geared to tweaking.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, we like to tweak because generally tweaking is far less disruptive than introducing something new. New things are disruptive. New things are generally expensive. New things bother the people who have been educated toward the old things, have made a career out of doing the old things, have seen success in the past because of the old things. So it's always safer for a leader to tweak. And the thing is, and we've all been in these meetings, you can leave a meeting that we spent 2 hours talking about a tweak, and you leave the meeting and you feel like we've done something. You know, we've made a decision. Things are going to get better. You know, we're going to tweak the current organization or department or sales force or, you know, whatever it might be. But tweaks never create momentum. They're safe, they're less disruptive, they're cheaper, and again, short term, you feel like you've done something. So that's always the default. But tweaking never creates momentum. It's always introducing something new.
You went on to say that it's new, but it's also improved and improving.
Right.
And really, in the improving stage, sometimes there is tweaking involved. So resolve that tension.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's a good observation. Yeah, for something to continually improve, that requires a tweak. So I'm not arguing that we should never tweak things that are involved in the parts of the organization. In fact, evaluation and small changes, evaluation, small changes are part of the process. I just don't want to accidentally communicate that if you make the right tweak, you're going to generate some kind of momentum. New introduces or triggers momentum, but once momentum has begun, there has to be constant attention to detail, which we see in industries all the time that are constantly coming out with a new version of an old product, an upgrade to an old product, a new feature on an old product. Those are just ways that you tweak something that already has momentum.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the allure of tweaking is it's just cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So does that mean that real improvement is going to be expensive?
introducing something new is going to be expensive. Anytime, in any, whether it's church world, nonprofit world, for-profit world, anytime we have spent the time creating something new, and you know, the problem with something new is it's all cost. It's no income,
right,
because of, you know, research and development and all those kinds of things. So consequently, the expense related to something new, it's a bigger decision. It's a more risky decision. So consequently, it's just easier to tweak the old rather than introduce something new.
And sometimes it means stopping doing 4 or 5 things that maybe aren't, don't have momentum in order to do the thing we need to do.
Yeah, one of the things I tell church leaders all the time is, look, if your entire church basically lacks momentum, then why not shut down 3 or 4 things that really aren't working that well anyway? Take those people resources, take those financial resources, take some risk, launch something new. And this is true in business as well. You only need one great product to kind of drive everything else forward. So why not let go of some mediocre things, put those people resources, financial resources toward doing something new? Now, in church world, as you know, that's so incredibly difficult to do because there's so much emotional attachment to the way we've always done it. And of course, in church world, our friends in the marketplace don't have as much of this to deal with. In church world, we get our theological categories all intertwined with our approach to ministry. So not only are we changing something we've always done, there's a sense in which, we think maybe God wants us to do it this way, and it's almost impossible to win those arguments. So one of the things that's healthy for churches to do is ask the question, what is a biblical mandate versus what is our current approach? Because our current approach always needs to be tweaked or done away with, and it has nothing to do with biblical absolutes. But again, that can become a very emotional conversation for church leaders.
Yeah. Andy, I know one of the things that we've kind of discovered is that sometimes just by stopping something and then restarting it, it creates momentum.
Absolutely, because it's a new season. Right. We know this from sitcoms. We know this from television series. You get to the end of a season, and what do we talk about between the end of one season and the beginning of the next one? When's it going to start? What's going to happen? So again, even when a television series isn't being broadcast, people talk about it, anticipating a new season. And of course, the first, Sunday night or Monday night, the new season of a television series, the viewership is generally higher than it was at the end of the previous season because new triggers momentum, even a new season. In our local churches, we do this all the time. We shut down programs that have momentum, and we'll shut down for a season, generally for the summer. And people will say to us, wait a minute, if you stop doing that, you're going to lose momentum. We say, no. If we stop doing it, we have an opportunity to start it fresh in the fall or fresh in the summer. And when we start it new again in a new season, we actually gain momentum because the principle that's transferable is new always triggers momentum. So even in a venue-oriented business or an events-oriented business, anytime you begin something new, even if it's something you've done before, new triggers momentum. So learning to leverage that, going back to previous discussions, learning to leverage that within the rhythm of an organization is critical because all of us have seen programs run, 24/7, week after week, month after month, year after year. They lack momentum, and instead of shutting it down and restarting it, people just try to tweak. Somehow we're going to tweak our way back into new momentum. The best thing to do, shut it down for a season, relaunch, and when you relaunch, you'll regain some momentum.
Yeah. Now we've talked about new, we've talked about improved, we've talked about improving as catalyst for momentum. What are the things that just kill momentum?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. Disengaged leadership. I again, in my world is church world, and I'll talk to the middle management, within a local church, and they lack momentum, and they say, you know what? Our pastor doesn't really care. Our board doesn't really care. Our pastor is just a few years away from retirement, and he or she just kind of going through the motions. They're just disengaged. So a disengaged or distracted leader, or a leader who spends most of their time trying to be famous rather than really driving the organization, that can kill momentum. Complexity kills momentum. This is why startups oftentimes experience a burst of momentum. They're very, very simple. There's not any money to waste. There's not any personnel to waste. There's no time to waste. Very, very focused. As organizations get larger, they get more complex, and complexity has the potential to kill momentum. One of the other really big ones that we talk about is overactive management. There's a lot that's been said and written about the difference between leaders and managers, and I don't know that it's as a polarized a dynamic as some people want to think it is. But leaders, generally, especially entrepreneurial leaders, create chaos, which is what they're supposed to do. New is always chaotic. New is always a bit unpredictable. New is new, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Managers are designed to clean up the chaos, put things back in boxes, organize them on shelves, and to make the world more predictable, and you need both. But in an organization where the entrepreneurial spirit is decreasing, the managerial spirit is increasing, managers can actually manage away momentum by bringing sameness to chaos. And that's not a positive or negative. To go back to a different discussion, that is a tension that has to be managed within every organization. We need the chaos of the new. We need the predictability that the manager brings. Let's don't go either way too far. That's a tension to manage. But I've seen, again, especially in the world of religion, where things need to be decent and in order and predictable, managers can manage away the momentum if they're not careful. And it's never intentional. It's always unintentional. Then another thing that kills momentum is a breach of integrity, the loss of trust in a leader. We love following people that are going in a direction we think we need to go in. There's the energy and the excitement about the new and the vision. But when suddenly I get the idea that, I think the leader is just leveraging communication skills to get me to do what he or she wants to have done. I think the leader isn't really as committed to this as they want me to be. That's a momentum killer in terms of personnel and staff and volunteers. And there are other things as well, but there are several things that if we're not careful, and again, it's such a intangible thing, momentum. Again, as you said at the beginning, it's like the wind. If we're not careful, if we don't understand it, we can kill it and never know that we have.
Andy, this has been very helpful. Any final thoughts for leaders?
Yeah, I would say this. Whether leaders listening are in a season of where they're experiencing momentum, and that's important to keep in mind, momentum comes, there's seasons of momentum, nothing lasts forever. Or if our listeners are in a place where they lack momentum, the questions are the same. What can we do that's new that would trigger it? Is the new a significant improvement over the old? And then what can we do to continually tweak the new so that it continues to gain and sustain momentum? And I think if that becomes part of the vocabulary and part of the conversation in our organization, then chances are we will be able to sustain momentum, or we will find a way to trigger it.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more information on the topic of momentum, check out the Power of Momentum DVD at northpointresources.org.